Hey everyone, so today's story is pretty interesting. We actually have news that Horizon, the fairly young Sony franchise about hunting dino robots, is going to be stepping into the online multiplayer world. In fact, according to the recent leaks, they are actually making an MMORPG. Sony has partnered with NCSoft, who is having one of their internal development studios work on the game, this being just one of the many projects Sony has underway, morphing their existing single-player franchises into multiplayer games and working towards a stated goal of delivering more live service titles. I think actually they want to have somewhere around 10 to 12 live service games in the next few years come out, which is kind of nuts. And you know what though? A Horizon MMO sounds pretty cool. In fact, I think it sounds really promising for a lot of reasons, not least of which being that the games already kind of feel like single-player versions of MMOs in a few ways. Now, NCSoft's involvement may leave some a bit uneasy. It certainly does for me, but I think there is a scenario in which this game could come out and not be a microtransaction laden mess. If nothing else, I think Sony's involvement makes those odds a little bit better. At least I would hope so. But let's jump into the story. So this news first broke last week after an article posted by Korean publication MTN announced their exclusive coverage of the Sony NCSoft collaboration. The article opened by saying NCSoft is developing a new game utilizing the IP of Sony's flagship franchise Horizon. This collaboration aimed at targeting the global market, allowing NCSoft to branch out from their existing Lineage IP. And of course there they are referring to the Lineage MMO franchise. It is incredibly successful in the East. In fact, Lineage 1 and 2 remain in the top most played MMOs in that entire market still to this day, even though they are starting to get pretty long in years. Now, outside of that though, NCSoft also has some very successful Western releases. In fact, they've got an entire Western branch of the company. Heading over to their website, you will see some well-known games, including Aeon, Lineage 2, and yes, that is right, Guild Wars 1 and 2, and we will circle back to that NCSoft ArenaNet connection later on in the video. Now, I imagine this article just focused on the Lineage franchise being what NC is known for, mainly because it's a Korean publication, so they are serving a different market, they have a different audience. But yeah, we know NCSoft here in the West very well as well, not only for Lineage, but yes, of course, for Aeon and Guild Wars. Yeah, for Guild Wars, it's crazy. So on the 8th of November, a source familiar with both Sony and NC said that the companies have agreed to a partnership to create a new game using Sony's promising IP, and that one of NCSoft's internal development teams will be making it. It then continued by stating negotiations have concluded, development on the game has already begun, and yeah, it's going to be an open world MMO set in the Horizon universe. Now, at the moment, NC is actively recruiting for the project. Job listings are posted on their website under the heading Project H Developer Recruitment, and the H, of course, we assume stands for Horizon. But development is in very early days. Under NC structure, they call this current stage the seed stage, and then as things progress and more of a game is formed, it will then move into the camp stage, at which point the team size will grow, it gets more fleshed out, and the game enters full-on production. Now, while no official announcement of a Horizon MMO has been made from Sony, it seems all but confirmed. Beyond the leaks, NCSoft's Global Communications Office put out the following statement: it is difficult to confirm information about unpublished projects that are currently under development. And to me, that reads like, yes, we're making it, but we can't really officially say it. But then beyond that, there is the fact that ever since the very first game, Horizon was meant to have multiplayer. The developer Guerrilla Games originally planned for Zero Dawn to have co-op, but ended up scrapping the idea during production. And then during development of the recent game, Forbidden West, they revisited the idea, but reportedly changed course, deciding instead to save it for a future standalone online game, which according to some Guerrilla job postings, they started hiring for back in 2021. One position they were looking to fill was for a social systems designer whose duties included engaging players in social interactions to create lasting relationships and, where compatible, create a guild-like group hope to explore it with together. They were also looking for a games writer with extensive knowledge of stories and narrative design in open world RPGs, online games, and MMOs to create mission, quest writing, and narrative design. And then about a month ago, new leaks came out further corroborating that Guerrilla has a multiplayer Horizon game in development. So I really feel like at this point the question is, with the news of Sony now partnering with NCSoft on a Horizon MMO and the fact that Guerrilla is making a multiplayer game, are these the same game? Like, are they working on the same title in collaboration? Did Guerrilla begin production on this and then NCSoft will be assisting with it? Or is Guerrilla developing some co-op multiplayer online Horizon game while simultaneously NCSoft is working on their own MMO version? It might seem strange, the idea of having like two different Horizon multiplayer games in development at the same time, but I do think it's entirely possible, especially if Guerrilla has been working on something since about 2020 and NCSoft just began development of theirs. Here's one like possible scenario. We have this idea that Guerrilla is making an online co-op, maybe even a shared world game, but NCSoft separately is making a full-on open world MMO. Now, given MMO development on average takes at least 5 or so years from start to finish, and development has reportedly just begun recently, it's presumable that this MMO might not be ready until like 2027, whereas an online multiplayer game, if Guerrilla started it a couple years ago, we could imagine that could be done in a year or so. So with that, there would be, I think, a wide enough gap if Guerrilla came out with whatever they're doing, like next year or something, and then in 2027, hey, now there's a Horizon MMO. That's a pretty wide different separation between these two. I think it's important to consider, though, another entirely possible circumstance is that Guerrilla is just making Horizon 3, and it'll have some co-op or multiplayer features in it. I mean, it could even be somewhat shared world in the vein of Destiny, for example. And then, yeah, NCSoft is doing like their full-on open world MMO thing, which the company is known for. It won't have a main protagonist. We will just play as characters in the Horizon universe, and we'll form tribes which will act as guilds or maybe races or factions or whatever. Focusing back on the NCSoft MMO, I think there's one really kind of potentially exciting thing that is just worth talking about, and that is who would be making it under NCSoft. As they specifically stated in that release, the game's being developed by an internal NC development team. Now, there are a number of studios who would fit that bill, and one intriguing option, believe it or not, is actually ArenaNet. Yeah, the studio who brought you Guild Wars 1 and 2. Well, back in 2002, they were acquired by NCSoft, and it's my understanding that they would be considered an NCSoft development team. Now, we've known for some time that ArenaNet has been working on projects that are not Guild Wars related. Initially, this is actually rumored to be a Dune MMO. Over the years, a lot of evidence came out that they had such a game in development. However, that was reportedly canceled and seems to have changed hands, supposedly passing over to Funcom, who officially revealed Dune Awakening earlier this year, if you recall. But the Dune stuff aside, like, what's ArenaNet been up to since then? Well, according to some job listings of their own posted this past July, they are currently working on an Unreal Engine 5 powered online fantasy RPG. So that falls within the realm of possibility that ArenaNet could be the ones in charge of developing this Horizon MMO or not. Another possibility is it's just one of NCSoft's many other internal studios. There's a lot of possibilities of who's working on what. Are there multiple Horizon online games / MMOs in development? There's a lot of potential realities. The thing that we know for sure, though, is that Guerrilla Games has been hiring for an online multiplayer project. NCSoft and one of their internal studios, which could possibly be ArenaNet, is working on their own MMO that they just began. Whatever the case of those possible combinations, all of this kind of lines up with Sony and their push into the live service games as a service market. This is no secret. The company has stated, in fact, that they plan to have 12 live service games in the market by March of 2026. Even though the company has primarily up to this point been known for single player narrative titles like God of War, Last of Us, and yes, Horizon, they still intend to continue making those experiences, but they also want to start serving the ever-growing always online multiplayer market, largely in part, I assume, to all of the extra money that those games bring in over regular single player games. You know, they have not as of yet stuffed their regular narrative titles with microtransactions to the aggressive nature that you see in live service games as a service titles. And it looks like they want to start dipping into that market. Sony can maybe use some more money, especially with the competing with Microsoft buying up everything, right? One of their biggest recent steps in this direction was, of course, the acquisition of Bungie, who they explicitly said were brought on to assist with their push in live service games. They weren't so concerned with messing with the Destiny franchise or changing things up with Destiny 2, as they just wanted Bungie's help in developing and supporting a live service game, which they have quite a bit of experience with, of course. And we've also got recent official confirmation that there's a Last of Us multiplayer game in the works. The expectation here is that this will be an open world experience, probably along the lines of Division, but maybe just a bit more dense and expansive. We'll have players who explore some massive city. It is rumored on that concept art to be possibly San Francisco, while, fighting back infected and then dealing with other enemy players, like an open world PvPvE experience. And I think it's likely that they continue in this direction of releasing multiplayer spin-offs of their successful IPs, because why create a whole bunch of new IPs and try to make popular multiplayer games when you've got a treasure trove of titles? God of War, Uncharted, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, and Horizon. These are all beloved franchises that you could totally make a multiplayer game out of each and every one of these. In terms of like what a Horizon MMO could look like, I think there's some reasonable conclusions and then also some exciting possibilities. If I were to speculate on a Horizon MMO, I would say, what about Monster Hunter? You could totally do a Monster Hunter style of game. You start out, you make your character, you prep for a hunt, you have a social hub where you group up with other players, and then you go out into this open world set in the Horizon universe, tracking down mecha dinos, dealing with some of the smaller ones to gather resources for crafting and stuff. I mean, that could fit so well into the Horizon framework. It's also almost certainly going to be action combat. I think there's no way that a Horizon MMO is tab target. NCSoft has quite a bit of familiarity with the action combat genre as well, so they can certainly deliver on this. So yeah, third-person action combat, just like the single-player games, but in a multiplayer space. And then I also think it's entirely possible, whether we're talking about whatever's Guerrilla is working on or whatever NCSoft does, it's entirely possible that we're mostly looking MMO light, Destiny, Anthem style. And the main reason I say that is because, I expect it to be 100% action combat, and the more players you throw into the spaces, a lot of times you start to run into lag and sync issues with those games. And while tab target MMOs compensate for that latency delay with a more forgiving combat system, action combat really feels horrendous with even the smallest amount of latency, of rubber banding, of synchronization issues. So I think it's likely, if it's not just like social hub and then grouping up to be in a party in the open world, or shared world where people come in and out of existence, whatever they potentially do, I think that's shared world style is more probable than just full-on open world with like 1,000 different characters running around hunting dinos. That seems, in action combat, that seems way less likely. I'll also say that playing through Zero Dawn recently, I mean, the game felt astoundingly similar to MMOs and a lot of its structure, systems, and presentation. They've got the basic modern day RPG stuff with like gear of different rarities, upgrade and enhancement systems, gathering and crafting. But then one thing that also really reminded me of a lot of MMOs is just the fact that like they've got these side quest NPCs that will be shouting at you from half a mile away that they need help. It's just so hilarious, and very much so reminds me of a lot of different MMOs that I played. So I can see the fit perfectly for a lot of reasons. All in all, I really like the idea of a Horizon MMO. It certainly seems to fall right in line with what Sony is aiming to do. I know NCSoft has a lot of bad associated with it, specifically around their monetization. That's probably the biggest initial concern. Their involvement also does seem like a strange choice for Sony to make, given how poor of a reputation the company has with Western audiences. They're looking to target the global market, but obviously they want to be successful here in the West, I would assume. So who knows, unless of course NCSoft's association is just tied to the ArenaNet connection, but still a lot of unanswered questions. I don't expect anything under the main Sony brand to be too bad in that sense on the scale of live service microtransactions, especially for one of their flagship brands, which Horizon is. And in general, I'm just excited at this idea of more big companies dipping their toes into the MMO multiplayer space. Like, give me more of these cool universes with these like rich backstories and lots of potential for world building. Give me an open shared world that I can go on adventures with and see other people. That's what I feel like, that's what one of the main things that the MMO genre has been been missing in these past like 5 to 7 years. Just not a lot of big marquee, highly funded games, you know what I mean? And I would like to see more of those. That MMO, that post-WoW MMO Gold Rush, it might have not delivered a lot of long-standing experiences, but there was a lot of cool, interesting, unique experiences and games that I got to play with people that I really, really enjoyed. And even if all of them didn't stick around, I'd like to see more people rolling the dice and giving that a shot. And then just in general, the gaming's pushing in this direction. You look at some of the most popular games out there. Certainly, there's a huge market for narrative single-player games, but all of these online shared world multiplayer games, you look at Fortnite, you look at Destiny, I just think they're good examples of where you can take the kind of MMO stylings into a more modern day experience, modern day approach. Even if I love the traditional structure of MMOs, the sort of thing that Ashes of Creation is looking to deliver on, I understand that the modern day gamer sensibilities might be leaning more towards a Destiny-like experience, but I'm okay with that too. Shared world, seeing other players, give me a big open world and an adventure and a place to explore. I'm down. I'm excited for that. So we'll see what happens with this, but yes, it looks like there's an MMO multiplayer Horizon game coming. It's happening in one form or another. We'll see though. We will see. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.